Hi everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric in our long-running series, the Unported Playlist, where I take a look at my favorite unported arcade games of all time. And today, if you can't tell already, we got G.I. Joe from Konami. And this is a game that I do not hear many people talk about, and I think it's an absolute travesty, because I'm going to go on record and say right now, this game is a banger. I absolutely love it, it is incredible, and I am shopping for an original PCB, because the MAME emulation can be a little bit dicey, and I'll show you when it comes up. Before you get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, and that notification bell. And if you feel so inclined to want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But if you can't tell already, this is a pseudo 3D run and gun game. It is action from start to finish, the graphics are incredible, the gameplay is awesome. I just love this game. It is so much fun, especially if you have a second player. It just gets wild at times. And you always hear about Sega and their super scaler games and how good they were at sprite scaling, but Konami was no slouch either. This looks incredible. As those sprites scale towards you, they don't get too pixelated till they reach the very edge of the screen. Everything looks great in this game. Now as a kid, I watched G.I. Joe, but I wasn't a huge fan. I would say that I'm more into this from the gameplay perspective than from the actual lore of what G.I. Joe is perspective. But it's just a blast, and it does bum me out the more people don't talk about this game, because when they talk about the best run and gun and arcade games of all time, I think G.I. Joe deserves a spot on that list. And I'm not sure why it doesn't make it. Leave me a comment down below and tell me why you think the reason is, and maybe you don't like the game, that's totally fair too. But all of the bosses are great. Right here off the first boss, you get two people in two different vehicles, and you have to take them both down. And then the stage just immediately restarts into the next area, the airbase. There's always something in the background that you're running towards, and it slowly scales towards you. You get this goal in the background, you know where you're focused. But all of the different opponents are great, and I love how they play with the different screen space areas in this game, because you have your reticle and it goes all the way from the bottom of the screen to the top. You're going to have to focus on both areas of the screen if you want to get past this game without spending too many virtual credits, because sometimes you got a lot of enemies on the ground, then it'll shift and start throwing these planes in towards you, so now you have to focus on two different areas at once, or sometimes these heavy enemies come in. You know they're going to go for you, their bullets are much bigger, and they are bullet sponges, so you have to kind of focus on eliminating threats and then focusing on the bigger ones, or vice versa, but you do get a strategy involved. And you can see that rig in the background getting closer. It's just such a dramatic look, and I will say this hardware throws a lot of sprites on screen at once. It's not uncommon to see 20 plus enemies coming at you while that background gets bigger as you run towards it. It's just so much fun. It kind of reminds me of Alien 3 The Gun from Sega, except from Konami, and as opposed to being part of the Alien franchise, it's part of the G.I. Joe franchise, and I would probably say this is the best G.I. Joe game that ever did exist. It's just fun, and as we beat this boss here, we've been running into the screen the entire time, but you'll see shortly we're going to be doing different things. The developers and designers of this game were smart enough to say, you've probably seen enough of X by this point in time, maybe we should show you something slightly different. So much like a beat 'em up, most run and guns, they have elevator sections, and we're going into Cobra's weapon plant right here, and now as opposed to running into the screen, we're actually scrolling vertically. Now some of the sprites in this area, they're not as bad right now, but they do weird things under emulation, and that's why I put a few offers in on a few boards, because I want to play this game without the emulation issues. If I didn't tell you they existed, you might not notice them, but I noticed them because I have played this multiple times in arcades, and I know what it's supposed to look like. It doesn't affect the gameplay whatsoever though, so don't think I don't want to play this because the graphics are slightly off. But as we scroll up here and you get that giant cobra in the background, it's just so dramatic, and the colors that Konami chose were both the G.I. Joe colors, but also a lot of the colors they liked to use back in the day. They had a very particular color palette. But right here as you scroll up, there should be a floor with a cobra insignia on it, but it's broken. But you know what's not broken? The soundtrack is just great. Go ahead and listen. It's just a really good classic Konami soundtrack, reminds me of some other beat 'em ups, and I will give you one more chance to listen to a track further on, because this game's definitely always changing up its musical stylings. But I just love this here, and now that you can see those enemies running across that non-existent floor, you might be able to more visually tell that something's missing, like what did that plane just run into? But again, it doesn't affect anything whatsoever, and if you do want to buy a PCB for this game, it's going to be about $500. I'm trying to find it a little bit cheaper from somebody I know, that's why I haven't purchased it yet. But maybe by the time this video goes live, it will be in my collection, because I would absolutely 100% love to have it. It's not every single unported playlist game that I play do I buy a PCB for, because honestly, I don't have an unlimited amount of money, and I definitely don't have an unlimited amount of storage space. But this is one that playing it again for the series made me want to go out and buy it. And you will see that you get a little bit of story. It's just, you know, your classic arcade story giving you motivation for why you need to be where you're going. But it is done in that fun G.I. Joe and Konami style. And now that we've seen all of that kind of like desert area and that big rig, now we're running through the jungle and you get different enemies to fight. The game never really changes up the gameplay mechanics. You're either running forward and shooting, or you're going up on an elevator and shooting. Sometimes you're going down an elevator, but same difference. But it does play around with the setting, giving you something new and visually interesting and making it a little bit more difficult, because some of the enemies are running through the foliage there, and it does take a little bit more to spot them. But this boss battle is awesome as well, and the boss battles in the game in general are really good. You'll see that there is some sort of structure in the background. We have the weapons and tactical expert right here, flying around on what looks like jet wings. It's like a jetpack, but a plane. Aerodynamically probably would not work whatsoever, but as a visual design for a video game, it looks awesome. But as you shoot him and you shoot that structure in the background, you're going to find that that's actually part of the opponent that you've been fighting. It's not doing anything until you hit it enough times, but now that it is up, you're going to see that we have a brand new fight against it. But I told you I'd give you one more taste of the soundtrack, so go ahead and listen. I'll come back and close out the video on this epic G.I. Joe. Enjoy! Again, just a spectacular soundtrack, and now we have another boss encounter, and if you haven't noticed, that ship is on water, but interestingly there's no water where we are fighting it. Got through this battle pretty quickly because I want to move on, but I just wanted to show you where that little bit of sprite issue comes from. And like I said, if I didn't point it out, you might notice something didn't look perfect, but you might not know what it is, and hopefully as MAME improves, this game emulates better. From a gameplay perspective, it is 100% there. There's no issues playing it whatsoever. There's just two areas in the game that don't completely function. That's probably just because some code for a certain instruction set or other graphical feature either have not been finished or have a slight bug in them. Not at all a knock of the maker of this. I think it's incredible. Just hopefully it does get cleaned up at some point in time. But of course it wouldn't be a G.I. Joe game if we didn't have to fight Cobra, and I love that this ship just basically looks like an aircraft carrier, something the US government would have, except the tower in the back is a giant Cobra. Maybe this shows up in G.I. Joe. Leave me a comment down below if you're a huge fan and tell me, but I just love what it's doing with it graphically. And the main takeaway from G.I. Joe in this video, if there is one thing you need to remember, is this game is just damn good. I love it. It's fun. It's fun as a two-player game. The graphics are incredible. The sound's incredible. And it makes me want to take my wallet out and find a copy to buy. And hopefully by the time this video goes live, you can ask me in the comments if I found one to purchase, and I will tell you yes, it is in my collection. But here comes Cobra. I love that he comes down on this chair. And like I said, if you're looking for a good run and gun game, if you're looking for a deep cut, more obscure, esoteric video game to play in MAME, definitely check out G.I. Joe. I think it's one of Konami's better games of the era, and I love pretty much everything Konami did back in these years. Short of that, I'll be back next Monday with an episode and unported playlist. I'll have videos throughout the week as well. I'll do the long play so you can see how this Cobra battle ends up, but spoiler alert, I win and he doesn't. I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.